Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, every year, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers develops the Manufacturing Priority Agenda to guide its advocacy geared towards manufacturing sector competitiveness. Our chief guest, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development, Ms. Betty Maina, Principal Secretary, Ministry of East Africa, Community and Regional Integration, Dr. Kevit Desai, IMF Resident Representative, CAM Board Chairman, Vice Chair, CAM CEO, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the CAM MPA 2022. And of course, in an era where the Kenyan economy and the global economy is ailing due to the COVID-19 pandemic and debt, coupled with, of course, this year's general elections, implementing the proposals in the MPA will guide the manufacturing sector on its road to recovery. And on a lighter note, as I also ask you to grab your phone, because we want to know where you are joining us from and how new this new year has been for you as a manufacturer. It's important to follow a set of instructions. And it's not just important to hear the instructions, but really to follow the guidelines. And I'm reminded on a lighter note of this team. It was a team working on trust building. And you know how it works. Somebody stands, supposed to close their eyes, and then they're supposed to fall with the whole trust that the whole team will be there to hold them. So this was the picture.
And it'll be an exercise in building trust between one another. So Harrison, if you don't mind going first, step up here on this chair and close your eyes. All right, and then everybody fill in. And we're going to ask you to fall, and then they will catch you. So you have to trust us. So I'm going to count to 3. Just relax and fall. Okay? 1, 2, 3. No, wait! No!
Ladies and gentlemen, it's important for us to have a set of guidelines to guide us through to make Kenya better, to make Kenya stand out. Now, I need you to get your phone, please. Get your phone, please. I know if you're using the phone, it's all right. You can just turn to a different tab. But this is for everybody, really, so that we at least appreciate who is joining us and, of course, where from. So this is a simple activity. So all you have to do is just go to your phone, go to www.menti.com, www.menti.com. Once you go there, it will ask you for a code. The code is on your screen. The code is on your screen. That's 90. Let me say that again, 9029. Let's go 9029 0142. Let's do this. Let's do this. So you have www.menti.com. The code is 9029 0142. Fantastic. I can see people are following instructions. So there is a love sign. And there is a thumbs up sign. So just click on them. Just click on them. We really want to appreciate wherever you're watching us from, whether it's via Zoom, whether it's via Facebook, please do this. We want to appreciate you for joining us during this launch. MPA 2022. Okay, fantastic. This is good. This is good. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Excellent. My name is Johnson Mwakazi. I'm your friend. So please, let's join the conversation so that we can make Kenya better, so that we can achieve our desired goals. Even as we look at, I normally focus on this, Agenda 2063. Fantastic. Okay. So we'll take that. So now this is going to be a very personal question very quickly in the next maybe 2 to 3 minutes. As you respond to the question on the screen, please write your name and where you're joining us from, and then tell us your response in regards to the question. Okay, let's do this.
Oh.
All right. What's new for you this new year as a manufacturer? What's new for you this new year? Remember the instruction, write your name, where you're joining us from, then tell us that new thing, your new, my new, drops creating the ocean that we want to call Kenya, the big ocean. Aha, we've got Sid. Okay. Where from? Sid. All right. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Aha. Remember your name. Remember where you're joining us from and what's new for you. Okay. Somebody says post-COVID opportunities. Fantastic. Growing the business, improving efficiency. Eunice from BAT. Thank you so much, Eunice. Mushai, Nairobi. Hope. That's it. Hope. Oh, yes. There is, oh, Maureen again. Hope. Fantastic. Regardless of what has happened, we can move forward. Josford from Al Habib Cosmetics, Kenya. Start exporting to the USA. Fantastic. Remaining positive and testing negative. Testing negative. Wayne at Del Monte. Schools are back open. Good for the nation. Good for us. Sashi Ravada from Nairobi. Okay. Mihir Chalishazar. Efficiency improvement. Fantastic. James, Ministry of East Africa. Peace. It's elections. It's elections. We need that peace. Learning to live with COVID. Power stabilization through solar energy. Kaushik Shah. Safal, positive sentiments across. Agasheri, Mugao, Thuku, Sheth, naturals, a new opportunity. Susan, remain positive mentally. Mental health, very important. Mohammed Rashid, Dubai, cost of power reduced, a better year forecasted. Okay. Rajan, optimism and a new way of working. Excellent. Siddharth Gala, ROK, Industries Limited, Nairobi, cutting costs, growing livelihoods of fellow workers, health and safety, new products, marketing, navigating cost inflations. Dominic Weetabix. Thank you so much indeed. We appreciate it. And of course, later on, as we listen to the different speakers, and of course, as we also get an overview of the MPA, we'll have a session for you to ask questions or even perhaps give your comments. So please be ready to do that. But for now, thank you so much indeed. We appreciate your input so far. And right now, we want to now delve into the event, appreciate what has been done so far, the process. As I earlier mentioned, this has been an annual activity. And really to just bring us to speed with the latest MPA, ladies and gentlemen. She is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and an exceptional leader, having worked on EAC, COMESA and other trade blocs. She has been regarded as Business Daily Top 40 Under 40, Top 10 Kenyan Communicators, BBC Power Women Africa, Most Influential People of African Descent, and she is the UN Global Compact Chair, Kenya. Please welcome Kenya Association of Manufacturers Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Phyllis Wakiaga. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Johnson, for the good welcome. And I want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone who is joining us. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to have you here today as we launch the Manufacturing Priority Agenda. This is something we do every year at this time, and we're really pleased that you have found time to join us again. Allow me to start by appreciating some of the guests who have joined us today. I have the privilege to recognize our key guests, who include the Cabinet Secretary for Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development, Honorable Betty Maina, a friend of CAM, thank you so much for your support and for joining us. The Principal Secretary for East African Community, Dr. Kevin Desai, thank you too, also a strong partner of the association. The IMF Resident Representative, Mr. Tobias Rasmussen, thank you so much also for joining us and for interacting with us a lot even last year. I also want to recognize the chair of the association, Mr. Mushai Kunyiha, our vice chair, Rajan Shah, our board members. I've seen a number of them are present during this call. Thank you for taking time. Our sector chairs, our chapter leaders, the members of the association, the members of the secretariat, all distinguished guests. This morning, I want to start by sharing a thought or a quote from Lee Iacocca, who is a great American businessman. And he opined that to succeed today, you have to set priorities and decide what you stand for. It's only through setting our priorities that we can be able to work towards our desired goals, even in the manufacturing sector. And for that reason, the manufacturing sector has been setting priorities every year. And as far as social economic development and growth is concerned, we still believe that manufacturing is the path to true transformation because of its impact on job creation, its linkages with other sectors of the economy. And that's why we remain resolute in our attempt to try and turn the tide and continue to grow the local manufacturing sector. We continue to achieve this by creating strong linkages, working with other sectors of the economy, working with partners, development partners, working closely with the government to try and really deal with the issues that affect manufacturing, deal with the opportunities so that we can grow a vibrant manufacturing sector. Despite the long-standing effects of the pandemic, we've also been able to record a number of achievements, and we'll be sharing them as we go through the presentation on the manufacturing priority agenda. One of the ones I must mention is the increased local consumption and the work that we've been working on around local content and the uptake of locally manufactured products. This is something that we are seeing grow, but there is room for increased growth going forward. This year, the manufacturing sector's focus will really be centered around recovering from the effects of the pandemic and the sustained growth for the sector during 2022. We shall continue to work relentlessly in advocating for friendly policies and frameworks that will foster faster economic recovery. So I want to urge all our members, our partners, our stakeholders to continue working with us even through this year to achieve the ambitions that we have set out in our manufacturing priority agenda. I believe that through the combined efforts and the collaboration, we will be able to not just drive conversations, but drive impact within our country. So thank you very much. And once again, I welcome you all to this session today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Drive conversation, but also impact. And it's important to set the priorities and decide what to focus on. Thank you so much for those remarks. Indeed, there is great room for improvement when it comes to uptake of locally manufactured products. All right, we move on next on line just to appreciate this gentleman who is a trained lawyer and has over 20 years experience in business at executive management level, in the manufacturing and distribution of agricultural inputs and real estate industry. He's an advocate for raising the profile and standards of good governance, sustainability, and environmental issues in manufacturing and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CAM Board Chairman, Mr. Mushai Kunyiha. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, John, and a big welcome to everyone who's joined up to this call. I see we've got about 120 participants already. Special mention to our CS. Thank you for joining us, always been a support. And the resident representative for the IMF, Mr. Rasmussen. Thank you for joining us today as well. We also have our board members. I've seen a couple of them who've joined on, including our vice chairman and other board members as well as the members, sector chairs, and everyone who's on board. So great pleasure as we launch again our manufacturing priority agenda for this year. Obviously, we are all within the COVID times. I think we're still within the COVID arena, and you can't really talk about any plans, etc., without talking about COVID. And for Kenya, I think even and for manufacturing here, we can say that despite the shock, despite the losses, despite the impact that we had, we have actually done much better than we feared. If you remember where we were in March 2 years ago, we were really, really worried about what would happen. And we've done pretty well. And also not just based on our own measures, but also against what other countries have done. And that has been through the work of not just the manufacturers themselves, their resilience and their tenacity, but also by the engagement we have had with government, regulators, and other stakeholders. And they've really supported us through this difficult time. So we also want to thank them for that, working together, the solutions they gave us, and everything that they input so that we'd be able to get through this, the hard part of this pandemic. But of course, we know it's not over. The story is still being written. And there's a sense of which we are going to get some long COVID on the economic side and the commercial side as well. We know we have now vaccinations, though we are still encouraging people. We need to get our vaccination numbers higher in Kenya, and we encourage our members to get their staff and themselves vaccinated as much as they can. And we have improved treatments with, it seems the disease seems to be getting a bit lighter, and we seem to understand better how to treat it. But it's still going to remain a challenge for a while. Our global supply chains have been tested and strained up to breaking point. And this has affected costs, availability of inputs, and it's likely to continue for a while because it's not resolved yet. Of course, part of it is the different public policy approaches from different countries. Significantly, one being China, because it has a zero COVID policy. It means every time there's an outbreak, there's a lockdown, and that seems to continue to hamper our trade, our inputs, and global trade for that matter. So that's a bit of the context around COVID globally. In Kenya, we also know we have our, every 5 years, we have a bit of opera and melodrama as we go towards elections. Elections are good. I think democracies are good, but we do quite make a story around them. In Kenya, I think we have built now the institutions and the systems that can take us through elections. We've done many of these, so this is not our first rodeo. And I think what we need to do is to remain vigilant that we do the right things, because we know what to do, how to do it, and we can run elections. So I think our aim this year perhaps should be, let's run an election where our GDP does not dip, but we continue normally because we've normalized everything around it. As an association, our key role is to engage all arms of government, regulators and stakeholders to address the issues that are affecting manufacturers and hamper our growth opportunities. What we deal with is the issues, what we try and do, and that's what is around our MPA, trying to deal with the issues and not just criticizing, but coming up with solutions that we think can help us get through these issues and solve manufacturing. We have joint goals about what the aim for getting manufacturing to 15% of GDP. So we all want to grow this. So if we come together and solve these problems, it helps us move forward. Of course, what the MPA tries to deal with are the key issues, and we know what they are, and we've talked about them for a long time. There's a high cost of production, policy instability and unpredictability, an arduous tax regime, transport and logistics issues, illicit trade, regulatory overreach, and market access, among others. These are challenges that sometimes we impose on ourselves or they come about as we're going along. And our aim is how can we reduce these challenges so that we can move forward. Our MPA 2028 is themed Manufacturing Sector Recovery and Sustained Growth for Kenya's Shared Prosperity. We think that if we grow manufacturing, we can share prosperity across the board, create jobs, because that's one of our biggest challenges for this country, create jobs and create revenue that is going to help us grow our economy, perhaps even meet our debt obligations, and just fund our social sectors as well. Our proposals are anchored on 5 pillars. There's competitiveness and a level playing field, and I'll talk a bit more about competitiveness, enhancing market access, pro-industry policy and institutional frameworks, SME development and industrial sustainability and resilience. Like I said, competitiveness, I think, is the overarching story that we'd like to keep talking about and emphasizing. And I think we'll hear a little bit about that from the IMF representative as well, that we really need to be competitive. And everything that we talk about and we look at should be looked at through that lens. Competitiveness is the only sure foundation on which we can build a sustainable manufacturing industry that delivers value to our consumers, whether local or in global markets. If we are really going to build a manufacturing sector that is 15% of GDP, we will need to focus not just on our local markets and import substitution, but also on exports. And to be able to participate in export markets, you must be competitive. People must know they need to buy from you because you have the best price or the unique quality, something that says only your product can compete in the global world. Our competitiveness, if we grow it, will help us create jobs, because competitiveness will bring more markets, will bring more demand for our goods, and therefore we can expand and grow what we're doing, create decent wages, and again, create a dependable social support system. So our ask then is that all the issues we've raised in the MPA be addressed from the lens of enhancing and improving competitiveness, whether it is regulation, whether it is tax administration, whether it is things like electricity, etc. We need to look at, does this improve competitiveness or is it taking us backwards? Regulations, we think, should be made easier for the regulated, not just for the regulator. Reinvestment in the sector should be encouraged. So anything that encourages investment should be pursued and pushed. Innovation and enterprise should be rewarded and not become a target for extraction of taxes or resources or something. So we remain, ladies and gentlemen, committed to our country's growth and prosperity. And we will continue to work with the government and other key partners to ensure that this is a focal point for all our policy advocacy endeavors. I want to thank all the manufacturers for their resilience, commitment, and continued support to the association, and their energy also to helping us support in our mandate to advocate for a nurturing environment for business. We want to thank government also for the things that they have done. We notably, power cost has come down. We've done some things on illicit goods. We've done some things on infrastructure. And we think the things we've listed here and the solutions we've put can help us continue in that trend, improving what is possible to do in manufacturing. And even as we go towards the elections, we are calling on the aspirants, as we saw earlier, to not only keep the peace and keep things going, but also to start putting manifestos that think about how do we grow our competitiveness? How are we going to grow our economy together? So thank you very much, and looking forward to the rest of this conversation. Asante, over back to you, John.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Clearly, everything must be seen through the lens of competitiveness. It is the firm foundation that will help us establish a sustainable manufacturing industry. And of course, this is a very critical year for us. We need to deal with the, yes, after celebrating the opera, the melodrama surrounding elections, we still must run an election that does not allow our GDP to dip. And clearly, politicians, in your manifestos, you need to put in the fact that we need to enhance and improve competitiveness. Excellent. Thank you so much indeed. We now move on, and just to appreciate the presence of this gentleman, he has been with the IMF since 2001, working on a wide range of countries. He has also worked on countries in countries in the IMF's Asian, Middle Eastern, Western Hemisphere, and European departments. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome IMF resident representative, Mr. Tobias Rasmussen. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Johnson. Thank you also to the CAM leadership, Phyllis and Mukai. Really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you all, to engage in this discussion. Good morning to everybody. So, of course, manufacturing is really critical in economic development. We've seen that across the world. In Kenya's case, manufacturing is recognized prominently, including in development plans, Vision 2030. It's of course one of the big four policy initiatives. Manufacturing is important. I think we can all agree on that. I was asked to talk here about how manufacturers in Kenya can create space for themselves in a globalized world. For that question, I will answer it basing my contribution on recent IMF analysis that was published in December. In December, we published the Article 4 consultation, it's called. This is the regular review of member countries' economies that we do at the IMF. We look at economic developments, at outlooks. In a sense, this is like a health check of countries' economies. As part of that work, one of the topics we looked at in depth was competitiveness, and there was a accompanying paper looking specifically at competitiveness of the Kenyan economy. That paper explored Kenya's export performance and how to understand what was emerging there. A central focus of the paper was an apparent disconnect between, on the one hand, Kenya's very strong overall economic performance, and on the other hand, a much weaker export performance. So what do we see there? Well, looking at Kenya's export performance, it's been relatively stagnant. And this is not just in the context of the pandemic of the past couple of years. It goes back to at least a decade before that. Among others, we've seen exports of goods and services falling relative to GDP, from around 20% of GDP in 2011 to 11% of GDP in 2019. So a quite marked drop in the importance of exports in the overall economy. We've also seen that Kenya's global export market share, so this is the ratio of Kenya's exports to total world exports, that market share of Kenya has remained broadly unchanged over 15 years. And that contrasts with the experience of many other countries in the region, which have been doing better, have been gaining market share. And that includes other EAC countries, as well as non-resource intensive economies in sub-Saharan Africa generally. So Kenya seems to have been falling somewhat behind its peers. And finally, a point to note is that looking within Kenya's exports, services have done relatively well, but manufactured goods have done relatively poor. So this export story, and in particular the underperformance of manufactured exports, is very relevant for the discussion today as we're gathered for the launch of CAM's manufacturing priority agenda. So that's one story of a relatively weak export performance. And as I mentioned, that stands very much in contrast to what we're seeing generally for the economy. Kenya's economy has generally performed very strongly. We had seen that real GDP growth averaged around 5% a year in the decade up to the pandemic. That's a very strong number globally. Also, what we see is that Kenya does well on many indicators that one would think bode well for export performance. So looking at various comparative rankings, World Economic Forum publishes indicators such as Enabling Trade Index, Global Competitiveness Index. There is the World Bank Doing Business indicators, and all these Kenya has been doing relatively well. Kenya also has a relatively diversified economy. It's successful in technology and finance. It's a participant in a range of regional and bilateral trade agreements. So what is happening here? What explains Kenya's relatively weak export performance in light of that strong overall economic performance? Well, as highlighted in the paper on competitiveness that we recently put out, there are some features of Kenya's exports that we think give clues to this. One is that exports are concentrated in products with relatively slow global market growth. A large share of Kenya's exports are basic agricultural products, tea, coffee, vegetables, basic goods that have been diminishing as a share of global trade, products that have not seen very rapid demand growth. A second feature, speaking broad brush, is that Kenya's exports are relatively low tech, low sophistication, low value-added products. These are products that face strong price competition, products that are typically produced by low-income countries. More sophisticated products can command higher prices, and there is evidence that countries that specialize in those more sophisticated, more high value-added products, they do better in terms of growing their exports. And finally, a third feature is low participation in global value chain. This relates to the previous point. Global value chains involve products where different stages of production are done in different countries. That enables more specialization. And there is evidence that firms participating in these global value chains are more productive, more successful. So that's perhaps a further angle to the relatively low sophistication of Kenya's exports. I think the big picture that emerges from all this is one of relatively lacking export dynamism in Kenya. Kenya, to some extent, has been stuck producing the same low growth, low value added, low productivity products. It's a lack of dynamism that is also seen in relatively little change in the types of products that are being exported. There is data to show that in Kenya there are relatively few new products being exported from year to year compared to other countries. Also, relatively little turnover among firms generally. And there is evidence that the highest productivity growth is often from new firms and new products. So having a relatively little turnover, little change is something that's associated with weaker performance. So that lack of dynamism is an area that was singled out in our review of competitiveness. I think in all this, it's important to say that it's certainly not the only determinant of export success. There are many other contributing factors that may play a role. Rigid product market regulations, high tax levels, high electricity prices, limited access to finance, all those factors, and I heard from Mokai earlier also about how CAM has been identifying these factors. Indeed, they are all almost surely contributing to impeding exports. But at the same time, it's not so clear that Kenya performs worse in many of these areas than other countries in the region. And so it's not obvious that these factors really explain Kenya's relative underperformance in exports over the past decade or so. So there is also something more going on, and we think that something more can be attributed to lacking dynamism in exports. That lacking dynamism can be an important part of the reason behind Kenya's sluggish export growth. So my takeaway from all this would be that if more of the sophisticated, high-tech, entrepreneurial approach that Kenya is known for generally, if that found its way into also Kenya's export products, then Kenya's export performance would likely be much stronger. So this would be my contribution, my answer to the question of how manufacturers in Kenya can create space for themselves in a globalized world. Thank you. And back to you, Johnson.
Wow, Mr. Tobias, very straight to the point, harsh indeed. We're doing well generally. In other indicators, services, we're doing well. But when it comes to manufactured products for export, we need improvement. We lack export dynamism. We're still manufacturing low growth, low value added, low productivity products. Well, thank you so much indeed. And of course, that's why we have the MPA 2022 to set the guidelines for a different result as we move on into the future. Now, very quickly, just to appreciate some of the participants who are joining us, I'd like to appreciate the presence of, we have Julia Skirima, Director of Industries, representing PS Kaberia Industrialization. We have Leonard Kwinga, Director of Planning as well. And of course, we also have Stephen Odua, the Director, Private Sector and Business Environment, Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development. We appreciate your presence. And of course, thank you so much for those comments that are coming through via the chat box. Please keep them coming. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker once served as a governor, director and CEO of Kenya Private Sector Alliance and a former commissioner of the Commission for Higher Education. He has championed private sector, TVET, government and development partner linkages towards transformation of Kenya's technical and vocational training platform. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, the Principal Secretary, State Department of East African Community, Dr. Kevit Desai. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mukazi. And indeed, I'm very pleased to be here with you this morning to discuss CAM's priority agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a link to what has previously been said. Indeed, these are very defining moments. I'd like to share an excitement with you with respect to the fact that we are about to turn into a new chapter within the context of EAC and what it means with respect to a very big demand for the private sector to indeed invest in dynamism. But to start with, we are all aware of the 6 partner states, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, South Sudan, Burundi, and now the possibility that DRC will be joining us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is indeed a remarkable opportunity that now lies within the scope of our investment decisions and our reprioritization decisions, because we are looking at, the 7th most populous region in the world by community, 275 million people. We're also looking at the 10th largest geographical region in the world. Congo brings in approximately 2.5 million square kilometers. We're also looking at the possibility of the access to very high level of mineral and resource-rich part of the continent, but at the same time, the resource-rich and rich people and that diversity which could transform the overall transformation of manufacturing within the EAC. We're looking at great levels of stability, an average growth of 7.9%, an average growth rate of 5% GDP with respect to East African partner states. And we're looking at aspects of, under the various structures of the EAC, profoundly addressing the business ecosystem by way of the customs union, the common market, the political confederation, and the East African Monetary Federation. But in particular, the importance here is that this market is extraordinary, and we're in the 9th step of the 9th step of our final structure, which ensures the admission of the DRC Congo. And that's indeed happened last week when the Council of Ministers met, receiving the reports of the negotiations as well as the review mission. And subsequently, the final step is the summit, and that completes the entire process. And so we're looking at not less than, less than a month. And then subsequently, you're looking at a situation where this unfolds into a tremendous opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, this also means a transformation with respect to how we trade, because it'll, for the first time, create the possibility of a link between the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, and promote an enormous access to an existing market, which EAC combined has only been able to export only a mere 12%, while countries 5,000 kilometers away have exported up more than 44%. And so I think that this just goes to show that the need for us to look into all these possibilities with respect to our priority agenda becomes absolutely critical to appreciate and understand the bigger picture. I'd like to also stress, ladies and gentlemen, that in order to achieve such market systems, we're seeing tremendous developments, not only beyond the region, which include the African Free Trade Area, where we are on the verge of concluding the final 3% that is required for admission into the African Free Trade Area as far as issues with respect to country of origin and specifically tariff lines. And this has been ongoing work. And when we last met as partner states, we had concluded on approximately 1,500 tariff lines. But this also gives you an indication of the depth of the kind of work that's going on within the EAC with respect to standards too. 1,500 standards have been established. The ability to ensure the qualifications of high-level degree holders has been established, but we're working on vocational and technical skills by way of recognition of occupational standards. And all of this creates that ecosystem that's deliberate towards its 6th development strategy, which focuses on several sectors, which Kenya has a profound step ahead with respect to agriculture, processing, and diversification, as well as construction and automotive manufacturing, and so on. So incredibly promising. And indeed, I'm hoping that you're all very excited at this moment, and looking forward to seeing how you can re-establish your strategic plans and build further capacity into these markets. Now, also equally important is government's role in creating high levels of productivity, innovation, and efficiency as far as legislation, policy, and the regulatory environments. Now, as Mr. Okazi said, I do come from a private sector background, and I think that indeed one of the most remarkable achievements to date is not all the hundreds of reforms that we've done, but that we have a system in place which co-creates policy, legislation, regulation, and ensures the proportionality of it. And so we've seen many good examples of this in various sectors. And so the big call here as part of a priority agenda is to step up the co-creation of policies, legislations, and regulations that would entitle great levels of manufacturing, productivity, innovation, and value addition. And this requires an enormous contribution, but I think that what has been lacking to date is a sector-specific focus, an end-to-end ecosystem. If we're looking at enhancing the overall transformation of transport with a view of ensuring that the input of cost and time is reduced, then we need to see to it that the transporters, the manufacturers, the logistics providers, as well as the traders all work synergetically and share opportunity in order to promote that overall transformation and value proposition for development. And this is what we see as missing. In certain cases, issues with respect to several decades of introvertedness. But now is the time to look at things afresh in view of the fact that government has spent enormously on multimodal transport systems, which include roads and bridges and one-stop border posts, and all the softer policy work we've done in order to reduce the time it takes for transport, not to mention, the ports and other kinds of key structures. Now, there's a lot still more to be done, and I think that that space of a lot more to be done is best placed in this very sensitive and dynamic capacity where greater collaboration is absolutely everything for success. And indeed, the value proposition is that market that I described further. But finally, ladies and gentlemen, we are also aware that the business reforms within this country are ongoing in several priority areas, starting a business, getting electricity, getting water, and all the way to the very end of insolvency. And there too, the need to ensure that on one hand, we recognize the fact that there's a momentum, and indeed there's a coordination system in government which brings all key ministries together under this theme of enabling environment. And what needs to happen many a times is, of course, priority has to be established, and choreography with respect to specific sectors and specific outcomes with a view of investing the same both from the public sector as well as the private sector. The other area of interest, I'm hoping, to the Kenya Association of Manufacturers and members is the fact that something unique occurs within the context of our borders. If I take you to Busia, Holili, or Lunga, you see an enormous energy of traders, local traders, and they trade ferociously across the East African continent, all the way to the Chad. And so the ability for us to work together as manufacturers and as government in order to establish a more profound trading system for them becomes absolutely essential, and could be the amplifier for cohesiveness and for transformation into the East African continent and beyond. So with all these possibilities and all this excitement, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to once again appreciate the launch today, and in particular the partnership and collaboration, which I'm hoping will now take a new turn of co-creation, and now very specifically on a sector by sector basis, especially with respect to the EAC, and not only help the Kenyan manufacturing agenda, but also the East African manufacturing agenda, which is espoused within the treaty and within the entire framework of the imagining of the East African community and its significance. And indeed, I want to assure you on certain prominent issues with respect to NTBs and so on, we are making progress. We are making progress on the African Free Trade Area. And now is the time, as chair of the East African community, it's the best way to show our leadership into the continent. Now, this is extremely important, and I'd like to now close. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Desai. We appreciate the new chapter, and it's time that we show leadership. We must have that sector-specific focus. It's time to look at things afresh. We need momentum and a coordination system. And I love this. It's collaboration for co-creation. So thank you so much indeed. And of course, just to look at some of your comments coming in via the chat box. Thank you so much. This is, Robert says, absolutely the way to go, sector-specific co-creation by government and private sector. Another one here says, this is Patel, says DRC can provide strong resources for inorganic value-added products for import substitution and exports. Products, among others, are based on zinc, copper, manganese, tin, cobalt, and so forth. Thank you so much indeed. Keep those comments coming. And of course, later on, we'll also require your questions, your comments in regards to MPA 2022. Right now, we want to move on, and we want to recognize the presence of the CAS, Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development. And I'd kindly request that we put our, we appreciate, of course, put our hands and appreciate Mr. David Osiani. Karibu sana, welcome. Bwana CAS, karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Makazi. I
Go
appreciate
ahead.
it. I'm glad to join the team. I'll not say much. I'm excited about this launch and to listen to every speaker who has spoken here, especially focused on competitiveness and how to get us ready for the global market. I think the Kenya Association of Manufacturers has done a great job with this launch. It gives us a way forward, a pathway towards realizing proper manufacturing in the country and readying ourselves for the export market, how to be more competitive in the country as manufacturers, and to be able to then take advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, of the economic partnership agreements we've been able to do here, and also intra-regional and inter-regional trade. So I'll not speak much. I think my boss will be speaking. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much indeed. We appreciate your presence and your sentiments. And of course, big deal indeed. AFCFTA, we need to be at the very center and push for movement. All right, so now we are set. And we are ready really to appreciate our chief guest, appreciating what she has done. She has more than 27 years experience in organizational leadership and development, with an ability to prepare and implement strategic business plans and mobilize resources for implementation. I know you know this already. Of course, she's once served as the chief executive of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers for 11 years, where she not only oversaw the doubling of membership of the association, but also established 7 satellite offices to complement the services offered at the national office. Her achievements have earned her the Kenyan presidential honor, giving her the title Moran of the Order of the Burning Spear. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our chief guest, the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development, Honorable Betty Maina. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Wakazi. Thank you very much, Phyllis and Mushai, and the entire team for the work we continue to do together. I don't know whether it's too late to say Happy New Year, but we can start there. Thank you, and I appreciate the presence of the IMF resident rep, Mr. Tobias Rasmussen. You have heard from my colleague, our CAS, the Honorable David Osiani, and our staff who are joining you here today, which demonstrates the importance with which the ministry takes our partnership with the private sector, not least of all the Association of Manufacturers. I want to thank KM for your annual preparation of the manufacturing priority agenda, which has been a tool for our dialogue together. And we are very committed to continue engaging with the private sector, and therefore the issues that you raise require us to pay attention and to continually adjust public policy in the same regard. I also want to appreciate the presentation that was made by Mr. Rasmussen. I haven't seen a copy of that, Tobias, but if you are able to share it, it would be very, very useful for us, because I actually appreciate what you said about the diversification of exports. And that should be something that as a country, we focus a lot more attention as a result of our export development strategy. So I'd appreciate getting a copy of that analysis. Now, last year, the manufacturing sector recorded, especially in the last half of the year, we saw some significant growth in the sector, about 6.7%, which is compared to a contraction of 1.4% in 2020. And that really is to celebrate the sector for kicking back better after COVID, or even during COVID. We saw 9.5% growth in Q3 of 2021, focused, of course, on higher production of food products. And also in the construction sector, we saw 8%, 27% consumption of cement, which is often a proxy for growth within the country, which, as you know, we hit double digits in the last half of last year. Now, as a result of your previous MPAs, the government and the private sector have worked together to respond. Part of it has been around market expansion for local manufacturers, as well as for within the local market, as well as in the export markets. Some of the ways in which we have addressed the matters of market expansion for manufactured goods has been through enhancement of access and reservations for the local private sector in public procurement, and that has been captured a lot in our preferential procurement master role. We continue to maintain reservations of 30% for SMEs, women and youth, and people living with disabilities. We also continue to give preference to local service providers in other government projects. But it's not just in the public sector or in domestic markets that we are expanding markets. We are also expanding markets through our export development strategy and our external trade relations and trade negotiations, whether it's within the East African community, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, or even in additional markets like with the UK, with the US, with China. Nevertheless, we also note and appreciate the comments that have been made that our products are still fairly concentrated, low value add products. So one of the things we want to work on as a government is how to expand our manufacturing value add and focus on more high income or high return sectors. We've also worked with the manufacturing sector to ensure compliance with standards and quality, because really this is critical for any penetration of both a regional and a global market, not to mention our local market. And it's really important that we continue to experience this appreciation and greater rise on matters quality, because we can't participate in global value chains without quality products. Thirdly, we've also worked with the sector, and we've been very excited to see greater resilience, especially in the development of goods that have replaced imports. This was very evident during 2020 and 2021, when we saw with the collapse of global value chains that there has been actually a lot more onshoring of production within the country and replacement of imports, whether it is on the medical commodity side or in furniture and other products. And we want to confirm that we are very keen on promoting local manufacturing, and we are excited when we see some sectors thriving. To support our economic rebound, we have assessed the sectors and intend to prioritize pharmaceuticals and medical supplies, consumer electronics, products or parts, textiles and apparel, the agro industries, and the automotive sector for greater focus, because we think these are areas that Kenya has a competitive advantage and can become a leader, and also help us to diversify our products within the local sector, within the local market, as well as for exports. The public procurement and preference regime for local products will continue, but we don't want, we obviously don't want our businesses to become over-dependent on this preference regime. So it is critical that we continue to advise and expand our markets in that regard. I mentioned the automotive sector as one sector that we are very keen on. And that sector, we have finalized the national automotive policy. It is currently in Parliament, but Cabinet has passed it. But we actually have already started implementing the same. One of the visions we have for the automotive sector is to see greater production of parts and components within Kenya, and greater assembly of the same. The policy provides for that, including model rationalization in order to spur growth of parts manufacturing within the country. And we want to encourage the Association of Manufacturers and your members to support and to make the necessary investment in this regard. Government is providing a stepping ground through the public procurement program, the leasing of security and police vehicles, but we expect that as capacity as maximum capacity or is reached, then that also provides a market, an opportunity for exports. And in the context of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we are coalescing around rules of origin that will support greater access to this market by goods that are made in Kenya. On the textile side, we have worked a lot to modernize Rivertex, but we are certain that we know that we don't source all our fabric that we utilize for our exports from local sources, but we definitely know that the work we have done with Rivertex is a launching pad for greater diversification of products that come from that mill. But just because it is a government control, but we also encourage other mills to set up and to expand their products, and especially to target supply of goods and services into our apparel and textile exporters. But we would like, as I have mentioned, to really diversify our exports and our products. When I look at the MPA, the areas that you have focused on, competitiveness and a level playing field, pro-industry policy and institutional frameworks, industrial sustainability and resilience, enhanced market access and SME development are very, very consistent with public policy. But one of the challenges that I'd like to throw to you, that we have thrown before, is we would also like to receive proposals from yourselves that will help us identify and expand the sectors of manufacturing within Kenya that are able to gear us up for greater value addition and greater diversification. And because what I have seen in the MPA works for players that we already have within these market sectors that we are already fairly well developed within this market. But the desire of government is to realize greater exports, and what we really need is also new products and new areas. So we are keen to collaborate with you to develop a better working environment and business environment for existing businesses. But government ambitions is also to expand the space that we are playing in, and therefore we also wish to receive proposals that could help us expand this space. So we continue to work with you. We look forward to strengthening our partnerships with the private sector, with our development partners and other stakeholders as we work together to improving the business environment in Kenya and to expanding private sector growth. This country doesn't have minerals like other countries in the region. So we actually rely a lot on the hard work of people such as yourselves that in order to grow this economy, and we will continue to nurture the partnerships. I thank you and look forward to greater interactions. Asante sana.
Thank you so much indeed, Madam CS. An honor. And clearly, as manufacturers, there is need for proposals to identify and expand the manufacturing sector. So it's an open door policy here, I believe. Is that correct, Madam CS? Excellent, excellent. So that is open, and of course, a key focus on high income, high return sectors, and also a focus on quality products so that we can participate in global value chains. Asante sana. And at this particular moment, we now want to move on to that place where we have a visual launch of the MPA 2022. And my apologies there, I missed to identify, Madam CS, your EGH, Elder of the Golden Heart. We celebrate you. We celebrate your work. And indeed, thank you so much for what you've done for Kenya and Africa. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we want to appreciate the work that has been put in to make sure that we can have these guidelines. And now, not only just see the cover, but also get the highlights of the report. So, just to appreciate in a visual sense, ladies and gentlemen, 3, 2, 1. So there you have it. And of course, the reality is that consumers now have a wide array of goods to choose from, be it Kenyan or regional and international markets. So they will only choose Kenyan products if they are competitive. And now to just give us the highlights of the MPA 2022, please, let's welcome Ms. Phyllis Wakiaga once again, CEO. Come, karibu sana.
Thanks a lot, Johnson, and yeah, very excited on the launch of our MPA. But also, I think the speakers have really set a good ground for this launch. Listening to both CS Betty Maina and also Tobias and PS Kevit, I think one of the things that's evident is that we can do more around exports. We can move into more sophisticated products. We can diversify our exports more if we're going to be able to really take manufacturing to the next level. So that's a challenge that I think I'll take on behalf of the chairman through our think tank, going beyond even just the day-to-day and what needs to continue to be done to sustain the current manufacturing base. How do we even take this to the next level and bring in more industries, move into more high-tech exports and diversify our products? So we really take note of that, and it's something that we will continue to work on. So allow me to take us through the slides. I'll request Maureen to share the slides. Thank you for that. So as we've said, we do this at the beginning of every year, not to be repetitive, but just to ensure that we remain focused, because I believe if we're very focused on some of these things, that's the only way they get done. So every year we have the priority agenda, but the issues remain within the 5 pillars we mentioned, but within them, we identify what the specific needs for that year are, and that's what we then advocate for. So I'll take us through the introductory. We'll look at the summary of the MPA wins for 2021, and then look at the pillars for 2022, and then I'll be able to conclude on that. So in a globalized economy, manufacturers actually face a lot of competition, not only in the domestic market, but they also do it regionally and internationally. And this means that it's very paramount for us to support industry and to drive Kenya into an export-led economy. And I'm happy that the previous speakers did speak about the need for us to grow our exports. So the MPA for this year, 2022, is themed Manufacturing Sector Recovery and Sustained Growth for Kenya's Shared Prosperity. The manufacturing sector in 2020 grew by negative 0.1%, and that was mainly due to the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. And as we look forward to receiving the full statistics for 2021, I'm sure that we did see recovery last year. We urge government to use this crisis as an opportunity to reshape the economy and also revitalize the manufacturing strength so that we can achieve high economic growth and greater equity. And it continues to be paramount to support local industry and drive Kenya into an export-led economy. So the MPA basically guides these conversations around what we need to focus on for the year to make this happen. So I'll speak briefly about some of the wins in 2021. We do take stock at the end of the year on what we think has worked. So one of the ones that we saw is the 30% electricity cost reduction by His Excellency the President. We saw the first phase reduction that was implemented in January 2022. We are currently just reviewing through the sector, and next week we'll be able to issue a statement around what this has meant for the sector. But we really appreciate that. Another one is the issue on minimum tax provisions. We did advocate on this issue because we thought that the provisions as they were worded were not going to benefit the manufacturing sector, the SMEs, and we did propose some of the amendments towards the minimum tax. However, these were not taken up by the National Treasury. So the High Court was able to declare minimum tax unconstitutional and the guidelines void. And we are still keen to work with government to see how we can have a broad taxation policy framework that supports industrialization, including a minimum tax if necessary that would be relevant. We also saw the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Enterprise Development launch the MSC policy at the end of June 2021. And this is a policy that will go a long way in driving the MSME growth. And we've come with our SME hub and a number of members within this SME sector. We are very keen to see how we can take forward this policy. The other one was the Cabinet adopting the National Sustainable Waste Management Policy in March 2021, very critical as we look at how we can manage waste sustainably. And we are also doing on our end work around waste management through KEPRO and seeing the role that we play as industry in this space. The draft operational manual for the rules of origin for AFCFTA was also developed. We also had the Retail Trade Code of Practice gazetted in June by the Competition Authority. And this is an area that we have worked on relentlessly as COM to see how we can have a better coordinated retail sector due to the impact of what we have seen happening in this sector. The National Treasury has also proposed amendments to the Competition Act so that CAK can deal with the abuse of buyer power and also ensure prompt payment to suppliers. The bribery regulations were also gazetted on 10th December. So that's just really a highlight of some of the wins, but we have a full report of the wins. So for this year, what do we have in the priority agenda? So we have clustered our pillars into 5 pillars. The first one is on competitiveness and a level playing field. And in this area, the key thing is on the issue of improving regulatory efficiency, which we feel is at the center of driving manufacturing competitiveness. We carried out a regulatory audit for all our sectors. And in some sectors like food and beverage, you require 41 licenses to operate. I don't think that is sustainable if we're going to attract investment into the country or grow some of these sectors. So for this year, we are keen on seeing how we can implement some of the findings and really drive regulatory reform. Another one is on the issue of promoting access to quality, affordable, and reliable energy for manufacturing. And I did speak about some of the wins we've seen, the 15% reduction. How do we sustain that, get to the 30%, and continue to drive quality and reliable energy? The other one is on reducing the transport and logistics cost. We did a lot of work last year in partnership with government on the Port of Mombasa, ensuring that goods were moving swiftly through the SGR. And this is an area that we want to sustain performance and also address some of the emerging issues that have occurred. Under this pillar, we are also keen on sustaining the fight against illicit trade through the different agencies, the ACA, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and the other agencies within this area. Another key area in this pillar is addressing multiple county fees, levies, and charges that continues to plague the manufacturing sector. I think we did issue a statement even as late as yesterday on what we are seeing in Nairobi County, where they have duplicative fees and charges for some of our exporters and are requiring them to pay cess despite the fact that it has already been paid from the counties where they are coming from, and other issues around duplication. Another area is the lowering of the cost of industrial inputs, and we really appreciate the role the Ministry of Industry and the Ministry of EAC continue to play as we engage at EAC level on how we can lower the cost of industrial inputs. Incentivizing the prompt payment culture, I did speak about some of the things that have happened, and this is an area that we will continue to work on this year. And lastly, under this pillar is on availing long-term financing to manufacturers as we seek to grow the sector, to get the sector to expand into new and more sophisticated areas. One of the areas that will be critical is the issue of capital. So we are keen to see how we can continue to design through our partnership with government, products that can avail long-term financing to manufacturing. The banking sector has a role to play, but government can also play a role through the different financing instruments that sit within the different bodies at both National Treasury and the Ministry of Industry. So I'll move to the second pillar, that is on enhancing market access. On this one, there's the issue of local market access, and a big part of it is public procurement. CS, thank you for the role the ministry is playing. We've been tracking alongside with you the uptake of the over 300 products that have been approved for exclusive procurement, and we are very keen to see additional uptake, and this is an area we will continue to prioritize for this year. For regional market access, the EAC and excited PS Kevit about the possibility of DRC being part of the EAC. I think this is going to really be a game changer. How do we then continue to address the issues of NTBs, enable us to access this market, and even for the AFCFTA, how do we grow our access into that market? And the diversification of international market access, we must appreciate that the Ministry of Industry and Trade has played a key role in concluding key agreements, amongst them the EPAs. We are currently having discussions around AGOA, and this provides a big opportunity for us to expand our reach in the international market. And working with our sectors, we want to see what more can we do to be able to support them to access this market together with government. I'll move to the third pillar, which is on pro-industry policy and institutional framework. Here we are still very keen on ensuring a predictable and stable industrial policy development through industry consultation. I know we keep flagging areas where we have sometimes policies or regulations developed that have not considered either industry views or that really are duplicating what already exists. For us, the key reference document is a regulatory report we issued last year that has a number of proposals across all our 14 sectors. CS Betty and PS Desai, we're very keen to use that as a tool because I think it's evidence-based, has really looked through the sector to drive a regulatory reform agenda with you so that we can have a more predictable and stable environment. And then the other one for us is, of course, the certainty and predictability of tax policies. And under this, we are really proposing that we have that national taxation policy discussed and developed so that we can have the certainty around the issue of taxation. Then the other one is the issue of policy coherence between the levels of government at county and national level to address some of the duplications that we have spoken about and that continue to affect business. A number of steps have been made. I know last year NDICC did sign an agreement with the Council of Governors. How do we take that forward to address the issues of really creating policy coherence between the two levels of government? The next issue is the SME development and the need to create a favorable policy environment. As I mentioned, we appreciate the passing of the MSC policy in June last year. And I think it's a very good document that we can use to take forward the agenda on SMEs and implement some of the very good proposals and policies that are included in that document. And on the last issue on industrial sustainability and resilience, for this one, we are looking long-term. For sustainability and resilience, we know that this is an election year, and we are very keen to see that CAM's industrial manifesto proposals are taken up by the political parties at both levels of government. So we will be launching our industrial manifesto, and out of the manifesto, really trying to see how both at national and county level, we can drive an issue-based discussion and ensure peaceful general elections and transition, but more importantly, embed the issue of industrial transformation within the upcoming government agenda through the medium-term plan 4 and also through the county industrial development programs and others. We also are keen to ensure stable macroeconomic environment so that we can sustain the recovery that we are seeing. Pro-industry skills development will continue to be a priority. The work on TVET in partnership with government through the skills advisory councils, the transformation of curricula so that we can continue to drive this agenda. And also that linkage between industry, government, academia, so that we continue to develop the skills we require for the ambitious growth before us. The green growth and sustainable development, the waste management bills and policies, the regulations around extended producer responsibility organizations are part of the issues that are included in the priorities in this area. We are still keen to accelerate SDG implementation, and the fight against corruption is one of the areas that we are focusing on, and broadly, just how the SDG implementation can continue during this decade of action, and we've made proposals under that. We also have the issue of a fit-for-purpose public service to ensure delivery, because we can have grand plans as citizens, as government, but the rubber meets the road at delivery. How do we address the challenge of delivery, work closely with government so that we have the effectiveness to deliver on the ambitious reform and growth agenda that we have to ensure the recovery of the economy. And lastly, the issue of digitization in the manufacturing sector. For this one, we also have a detailed report with very specific policy recommendations. So I'll move to the conclusions. I think if we implement the proposals of the MPA, it will go a long way in continuing to revitalize the manufacturing sector, which is still trying to overcome the effects of the pandemic. We are committed to achieving these goals and working closely with national and county governments and development partners towards the industrialization vision for Kenya. And we'll also work closely with the political aspirants to ensure that manufacturing is prioritized within their manifestos, and that even as we have the change of guard later this year, that we continue to remain focused on the reforms that have already begun, so that we grow our manufacturing competitiveness, our productivity, we expand our exports, and at the end of the day, create a better life for all Kenyans. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Phyllis, for that breakdown on the highlights of MPA 2022. And I love this part. We must have issue-based discussions and not just stop there. We must address the issue of delivery. And of course, we want to open it up. If you have any questions, any comments, remember you can actually just go to the chat box and post your comments, and we'll be glad to look at some of them. Very quickly, I can see here we have Wesley. Wesley says, we indeed have a competitive advantage as a country, and our produce or products need to be marketed and promoted globally. The approach taken on tourism needs to be replicated on manufactured products and agricultural produce, but most importantly, our cost of production needs to be managed for us to compete. Okay, thank you so much, Wesley. Please send in your comments and questions, and we'll be glad to respond to some of them before we finalize. But I want to take it back to Chair. Of course, you really brought in the aspect of what will be happening this year, a great concern. Of course, we have grown, but still concerns in regards to how we handle elections. And just wanted to find out from you, what role would CAM play to support the quest for a peaceful election? Chair.
Thank you for that question, John. We play this role, peaceful elections, on many levels. Firstly, to say, like Phyllis mentioned, we are going to be launching our manifesto. So we think that one of the ways you can influence the election is make it contested on the ideas, so that we say, let's discuss ideas. What are the different ideas that different players have? And that's not just at national level, but also at county levels, so that we are trying to get the conversation around the election being around ideas. We also encourage our members to participate. Actually, that is part of being a Kenyan, is being participatory and engage in the elections, so that you can also try and drive that conversation in a more ideas-based direction. But beyond that, like I said, there is a question about institutional integrity and institutional performance around the IEBC, the police, the government itself, the political parties, and their agents, and the judiciary. And one of the key ways we are engaging in that is that we participate under the KEPSA umbrella with the Kenya Daima program, where we are saying we want to strengthen and watch these bodies to make sure that they are actually making the right choices, doing the right thing around the election time. We think, like I said before, we've gone a long way in this election cycles and what we can do and what we should do. We know what we should do. It's just making sure that we do get people to do the right thing and do it properly and do it well. Finally, of course, is that under the Kenya Daima is getting everyone to sign on to we call it the Peace Pledge, which is basically about saying, yes, there is a system, there's a process. This is the system and process I will follow when this election is going on, is being carried out. So that is conduct before the election, during the election, and after the election. That is what is going to be important for all of us to look at. So that's how we hope to participate. Thanks.
All right, excellent. There's another one here. Is there any strategy being discussed with China to promote our export industry? Like most of the Chinese companies are moving to Cambodia, Vietnam, and other regional countries. Why not Kenya? This can bring a lot of expertise, technology, and investment to support and promote our export industry. What are your thoughts?
That's to me, yeah? Again,
Yes, but yeah.
I think, yeah, very good ideas. And I think there is a lot of opportunity there in terms of, especially not only just for people moving from China, but looking at the export markets that are trying to get away from China, because we know there's some issues with China, US, China, Europe, and people after the pandemic realized we can't just have one source, whether it's political or just practical. We can't just rely on one source for all our inputs. So there's a big opportunity there. And it's also good to say that we've actually already had Chinese investment in this country. We've got factories already set up, visited a couple of them in ceramics, in, what was that? That was diapers and something else. Yeah, so, and of course they're there in steel, cement. There are many other industries where we are getting investment from those markets to come here and invest. We have a big textile market as well for under the AGOA scheme. And again, there we have a lot of foreign companies, not just really Chinese, who are coming to invest here and work on exporting to other markets. We've seen under the British, let's go the donor, I forget the name of the donor agency, but we've had a Manufacturing Africa program that has been running, and this is about encouraging British companies to come here. And it's not just to sell us their technology or their products, but to invest here so we can get products that we can export elsewhere. So what we are saying here for government is, how do we attract foreign direct investment? And that investment need not be just coming to set up their companies. They can come and buy into local companies, come and partner with local companies already, so that we can get into those markets that they have, and we can produce manufactured goods, higher level manufactured goods, as we were challenged to get into those markets. So there is a lot of opportunity and work that can be done there. Finally, just to mention that we are actually, and the government has been busy going around the world, I think, led by the president, the CS, to all sorts of trade fairs. Next week, we are going to be in the Middle East. There's a Gulf conference in Dubai. And again, we are still looking for markets, looking for investors who can go into this market. So it's a continuing task. Like someone said, it's how we do it for tourism. So we should not give up. We just keep at it and keep at it. And then again, at the back here, back home, make sure that we are developing the capacity, capability, and environment that allows us to produce for these global markets. Thanks, John.
Excellent. We still have a responsibility here. Yes, keep at it, but develop the capacities, capabilities, and the environment. Very critical indeed. Please send in your comments. We'll appreciate responding to some of them before our time elapses. There's somebody here. This is Agayo. Says, manufacturing is so key to our economy, to our economic development, employment creation. Level of unemployment in Kenya is worrisome, and all measures that bedevil the sector, such as unfair competition, high costs of production, and taxation, must be addressed. IMF representative talked about the need to adopt technology to enhance our export value addition. We perhaps need a manufacturing and export technology transfer fund. Wow, okay. Maybe if there is a comment in regards to that, but before that, I just wanted to come to you, CEO, Ms. Phyllis Wakiaga, focusing on SMEs growth being central to the manufacturing sector. And of course, you have a great role there. The question would be, how can the government and development partners come in to support the efforts that you're already engaged in?
Thanks for that question, Johnson, on SMEs. Indeed, SMEs, I think, really the path also to develop a local manufacturing sector. And one of the things we've spoken about in the past is how do we accelerate SME businesses to grow? Because our acceleration level is quite slow. A lot of small businesses remain small for too long, and we've looked at globally countries that are able to grow their economies. The acceleration of SMEs from being micro to small to medium to global export companies is much faster. And then what then do we need to do to accelerate this growth of SMEs? When you speak to SMEs, of course, one of their biggest challenges is the issue of access to finance. One of the wins we did see is the creation of the credit guarantee scheme last year. So how can we expand available credit to the SME sector so that they can be able to have access to affordable finance that enables them to grow their businesses? The other one, of course, is the markets, because access to market for them, whether it's domestically, regionally, or internationally, is critical. How do we enable SMEs to access markets? If it's government procurement, how do we give them some preference so that they're able to access government markets? Also working with them around export development as they grow, because at different stages of their businesses, they would then need to grow to internationalize and access export markets. Another area is skills development, the need to help them build their capabilities at farm level to be able to grow their businesses. Another one is the linkage also to larger businesses. So as our SME hub, we do try and expose our SMEs and link them to our members. We've done something, for example, with Unilever. We've done something with Carrefour, where we are saying, how do we support them to get their products on the retail shelves? So those are some of the initiatives on our end, and just getting additional support from government to implement the MSME policy that I spoke about, to strengthen the government institutions like the KIEs, the KIRDI, and others, even the ones that offer financing for the SME sector, I think is going to be critical. And that is the role government could play together with us to grow the SME sector in Kenya. Thanks.
Right, thank you so much for those responses. And wow, okay, so there's some comments still coming in. Just allow me to read one or two of them because of time, and then we wrap it up. This is Robert. Robert says, looking forward to realizing the manufacturing-led economic renaissance. For us at Vilgro Africa, I hope I got the name correct, a business incubator and early stage investor, we are seeking partnerships in developing local manufacturing sector in the health technology sector. This is a low-hanging fruit that leverages our strong academia, R&D and startup ecosystem base for knowledge-driven economy. Thank you so much, Robert, for that comment there. Open for partnership. And All right. There was a question here. Okay. This is a question to Mr. Tobias, if you're still there. As somebody says, greetings to everyone. As you stated that Kenya does not have dynamic exports, so what is your advice to the Kenyan government to have a dynamic export sector? Mr. Tobias, if you're there, you could kindly respond to that question.
Yes, thank you for that question. So not an easy question to answer. I think there are many components to it, including support to technology, to innovation generally. But I would also say, and this is really our focus at the IMF, is the importance of having just a sound economic environment, stable macroeconomic environment that's conducive to investment, it's conducive to risk taking. So there are many components to it, but from the IMF side, our focus really has been to support government's efforts in having a stable macroeconomic environment, including also, and this is something I think was mentioned a couple of times during the session here today, stable, predictable tax policies. So having that stable, predictable environment encourages investment, encourages risk-taking, encourages adoption of new technologies. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed. We appreciate. Wow, there's several questions coming in, and Emmanuel, let's close with you, Emmanuel. In fact, you've sent another follow-up questions insisting we need to really respond to your question. Okay, this is it. Manufacturers said the power is high. Power is high now. It has started going down to some percentage. Why are the goods or products still high? Or what are the variables that determine the price? Number two, is there a way you can give guidelines or engage with county governments so that we have industries, or rather manufacturers, in all counties near to the raw materials? Over to you, Bwana Chair, Madam CEO. You can respond to Bwana Emmanuel there.
Yes, thank you very much. It looks like he has two questions, but on the first one of power, I think we mentioned power has already gone up. So even though we've got the cut and we're very appreciative of it, and we are hoping to get the next 15% come through, there is the what do they call, the fuel levy part of the cost, which is still continuing, and that is dependent on what the fuel cost is. So power cost is still high. And power cost in manufacturing has a different impact depending on what you're making. In some industries, like cement, steel, it's a huge part of the cost of making the product, because those are very high energy industries. But in others, less so. If we take, say, pharmaceuticals or food, it is still an important cost, but it is not the biggest cost. So even as it goes down, it doesn't mean that if it goes down 15%, it doesn't mean the cost of products will go down 15%. It is one of the inputs, not the only input. Secondly, I think, and why it was so timely that it was happening now, we are living in a time and age, like I mentioned earlier, the impact of COVID has meant that a lot of other costs are going up. If we look at the exchange rate, we've depreciated as the dollar has been appreciating. globally. It's not just a Kenyan issue. The dollar has been appreciating. So we have now gone down about another 10%, 15% if we say for the last 2 years. So that has already been an impact. The logistics has made inputs a lot more expensive. And in fact, currently what is driving a lot of the cost changes is just the cost of inputs that we put into the manufacturing process that is driving this. So that's why costs are still high, and it is still useful, because what would happen is that costs would have gone up even higher. It's not that it's not useful and it is not being passed on. It's just that the cost now that would have gone up would have gone back even a little bit more than they currently are. In terms of counties, I think we again go to, like Tobias mentioned to us about countries, and I think also Dr. Desai was talking about regionally, where are we competitive? So I think one of the challenges we've had with the counties, and there are 47 of them, we need to remember, is that you cannot have 47 factories. One manufacturer is not going to have 47 factories across the country, because economies of scale are not there. But definitely each county can have a factory on something that they produce, something that they're uniquely, qualified or close to. So you, for instance, you'll see there's a bit of cement in Kajiado, say, and that's Mombasa, Kilifi, Kwale. You'll find cement factories. You'll find coffee, say, in the central areas, and tea. But again, if we're going to go high end, one of the things is going to be about volume. You're going to need to consolidate these factories. And finally, as Tobias just answered the prior question, is that getting a factory is not just about where the source of the raw material is. It's about all the other costs that go with it. It's whether you have electricity nearby. It's whether you have land that is usable. It is the county fees and charges. And here we want to emphasize, like Phyllis mentioned earlier, it has been quite a big constant challenge to everyone. And recently we saw what is going on with Farmers' Choice, where the county fees keep rising. So right now, like Nairobi, if they are going to charge manufacturers to bring in raw materials to manufacture, then the attraction of Nairobi as a manufacturing site just goes down, because you'd rather go where people are going to allow you to conduct your business without charges which are more predatory than helping you get there. Things like water as well, which is a very important one for manufacturing, is whether the counties are providing water wherever they need. So it is a complex thing, and it is all going to be within our, hopefully in our manifesto we'll be launching soon. We are trying to tell the counties what are the things that you need to do and think about if you're going to attract manufacturing to your areas. Thanks a lot, Johnson.
Well, many thanks, Bono Chair. And of course, thank you so much for your questions and comments. There is a final comment here from John Bosco Kalisa. He says, just to appreciate CAM for this wonderful presentation. However, there is a need to do a lot in areas related to trade facilitation for manufactured exports, issues related to counterfeits, outcompeting the local manufacturing industry, and of course, inadequate capital for expansion. Thank you so much indeed for all your questions and comments. We appreciate your presence and your contribution. Indeed, as we come to a close, the COVID-19 pandemic has proved that it is risky, very risky, to over-rely on imported goods. You saw what happened. Global supply chain disruptions due to the pandemic revealed that ability to buy goods in the international markets is not enough. Logistic difficulties might be such that no trade happens. So clearly, we need to promote our very, very own domestic industry. Right now, to close for us, I want to appreciate your patience, appreciate your contribution so far. And of course, just to note that this MPA 2022 document is not here to stay in some shelf. No, you need to get a copy of it so that we follow guidelines and realize that Kenya we want. It is possible indeed. And now to close for us, I welcome Mr. Rajan Shah, Board Vice Chair. Come, Karibu sana. Welcome.
Thank you, Johnson. I hope you can all hear me. First of all, I would like to appreciate the presence of our Cabinet Secretary of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development, CS Betty. As always, it's a pleasure to see you. Of course, you present yourself in the Kenyan fabric, and I think you walk the talk from which we all need to learn. It's always a pleasure to see you. Principal Secretary for East African Community, Dr. Kevin Desai, the CAS of the Ministry of Industrialization, Honorable David Ostiano, the IMF resident representative, Mr. Tobias Rasmussen, our CAM chair, our very energetic chair, Mr. Muchai Kuniha, all our board members present here today, our very energetic CEO, Phyllis Vakiaga, all CAM members present here, invited dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. I think good afternoon, and it's really a pleasure. First, I would like to give a big thank you to all of you, and it's really a big audience here today for taking the time to be present here as we kind of showcase our 2022 manufacturing priority agenda. And obviously it was because of the support of all of you that this has been possible. The manufacturing priority agenda is really the bedrock of what CAM the near-term strategic goals are, and this is what drives us for the rest of the year on what we advocate, both internally and externally. Any country worth its salt and which wants to strive for economic development and growth would not, without discussing the industrialization agenda and manufacturing in particular. And that's what we have heard through various speakers today, that this remains the bedrock, and it is one of the 4 pillars that the president had launched, His Excellency, that would drive this economic growth. From this discussions today, the sector is very keen for this economic recovery and attaining the growth towards Kenya's prosperity. But as we launch this, we have to remember 2 particular events which are going to or are unfolding this year. One is that we are just coming out of a very unprecedented event, maybe once in a generation event of the COVID. And out of this is where we see the resilience of this particular sector of the manufacturing sector, which has come out of. And the second event, which is the upcoming event of the election, and every 5 years during the election cycle, we are committed as the manufacturing sector to ensure that our agendas are not thrown off course, and we continue remaining committed to our growth as a sector. So this is what has really driven towards what the 2022 manufacturing priority agenda talks about. I don't want to kind of mention the 5 pillars, but it's actually not by accident that the first pillar that we talk about is the competitiveness and the level playing field. And truly all the other pillars sometimes speak towards that. This is the overarching pillar that without which some of the other pillars also become
meaningless. We have heard from Tobias Rasmussen that as Kenya, the market share of export is lagging behind compared to our peers, and also the complexity of our manufacturing is also the value add and complexity of our manufacturing is also lagging behind. So these are areas that we actually need to fix, and we have heard from various speakers on what are the recommendations towards that. We have also heard from our CS on various sectors where the government has actively played a role towards looking at how we can enhance our competitiveness, the automotive sector, the textile sector, the agro-processing, the green economy. So what it tells is that if we are going to become competitive, we can pretty much make it across all the sectors. And the second pillar, which is the enhancing market access, opening up markets within, as we appreciate what the government is doing towards the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya. We look forward to expanding that product range of, that the government will support local manufacturers. But we also want to enhance the purchasing and the private, within the private sector, the support to create that economy of being able to support more of the local manufacturers. And we also appreciate what the CS said, that even to grow our exports, we also need to ensure that we have quality compliance, global quality compliance. And I think as a manufacturing sector, we are up to the challenge to ensure that we are competitive globally and are able to our products can stand up to the test of any country in the world. The third aspect is the pro-industry policy and institutional framework. And this is what speaks to a very stable environment in which a stable regulatory environment, stable tax environment, and these are absolute necessity for businesses to survive. But businesses require stability. Unpredictability throws businesses off. This also includes the dynamics of the county and the national government and how we can actually harmonize so that we don't, when we are all operating from our various counties, we do not feel like we are operating from different countries. So all this speaks towards bringing down the cost of doing business and bringing predictability. The fourth pillar, which is the SME development. No industrialized country would have gone through without this SME development. All large organizations, as what Felix just mentioned, have passed through, first of all, being once upon a time an SME. And this remains still the bedrock of how we can actually industrialize. And CAM truly remains committed to ensuring that the SME development, the capacity building, talking about finances, talking about how they can get access, market access, both within the country and outside, remains a priority to ensure we develop for SME development. And finally, industrial sustainability and resilience. And I would probably say two aspects here. One is what we talk about the near term, the role that industry will play towards ensuring that during the upcoming elections, how we are proactive to ensuring that elections, which are in every 5-year cycle, do not disrupt the sector, and we remain relevant and positively conversing with the political players to ensure that that remains our motto. But also on the other side is that as globally, COVID has taught us how ways of doing things, technological development, skill development, that has become an essential part. And this is a role that as manufacturers, we have to build our own capabilities, our own technology, as what just earlier on what Tobias mentioned, that if we have a stable policy environment, stable and a competitive environment, the private sector itself will adopt the innovations. And innovation needs to become part of our culture, part of our values. Then, of course, we will be able to grow and prosper in the new world. Finally, let me just thank all the different players. I first want to appreciate and be grateful to our government for the continued support that they've given us in driving this conversation of competitiveness, which I think the most used word today has been competitiveness. And we need to continue with that agenda. And to that, our CS, Betty Minor, and our Principal Secretary, Dr. Kevin Desai. Before your public life, in your private life, you were extremely connected with CAM. You are our friends. In fact, we consider you as ambassadors of CAM in government. And of course, your open door policy is something much appreciated. I want to thank you for all that. I want to give our gratitude to our members. Of course, without your issues that we need to advocate for, this manufacturing priority agenda would not have been. And your continued engagement at both sector and at chapter and regional levels continues to be essential for us to kind of drive your agenda. We remain committed. This is your organization, and we remain committed to delivering to you. To our development partners, thank you very much. You always remain a true partner to CAM, and we will continuously work and engage with all the development partners. The CAM board, led by our able chair, Mr. Muchai Kuniha, you have steered this association to greater heights and the initiatives that we are seeing here. We appreciate for all that leadership role which is being played at CAM. And finally, to the CAM Secretariat, and as I said, our CEO, who is ever so energetic. We thank you for all your hard work to bring this 2022 MPA to life. Our appreciation goes to all of you for your invaluable contribution to the success of this launch. As I close, I would just like to continue with the message that this association is working for the betterment of economic development and in particular manufacturing sector, and we remain committed to both our members and the government to ensure that competitiveness remains the top of the agenda. Thank you very much, and God bless all.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vice Chair, for those remarks. Indeed, businesses require stability, predictability, and innovation must become part of our culture and values. Thank you so much indeed. We now want to close by saying asanteni sana. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation today, part of the launch. Indeed, as Bwana Chair said, during this election period, we know what we should do. And that's exactly what we should do. If you don't know what you're supposed to do, just do the right thing. Special thanks to Dr. Simon, Rosemary, Faith, working behind the scenes. Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I celebrate all of you. It was an honor serving you as the moderator of the launch. God bless you. God bless Kenya. See you at work.